How's that lighting? Terribly shadowy, but who cares? Okay, folks, so on Saturday, I went up to Placerville to the Snowline thrift shop, browsing the DVDs, and I picked up a copy of The Color of Money, one of the few Martin Scorsese movies I have not seen, and he is one of my favorite directors. That copy turned out to be a dead copy, and I could not get it to play on any of my players. So then I swung over to Rasputin's in Modesto on Sunday, and I picked up another copy for $3.95. So my $1.29 on my thrifted copy was wasted. So hopefully this copy plays. But we're not going to talk about this film today. We're going to talk about part one, which I did not realize there was a part one to this, which I already own. I didn't realize this was a part two, rather. I have seen this movie years ago in my early 20s, and I have it in the extensive archives, The Hustler. So apparently these are a 1 and 2 movies. This movie came out in 1961. This movie did not come out until 1986, but we will review this one shortly. But I felt like I needed to watch this first. This is a special collector's edition. Love my DVDs that have a booklet with a scene sheet. Sadly, The Color of Money does not have its scene sheet because it was a used copy. The Hustler, 1960 run, directed by Robert Rossen. I don't know why I wrote Bosen. Doesn't matter. 135-minute runtime. I kind of got film noir vibes. People kind of think that, but then kind of more so along the lines of the way it was filmed rather than like fitting to the genre. There was no femme fatale type of person. I would say I agree with a lot of the critics where they call this movie an instant classic and a modern classic. I'm going to jump right into my 1 to 5 review, as you will get a rare 5 out of 5 for me on this film. It is an excellent movie, excellent cast. I read a little bit of an article that said that unlike a lot of the movies of the era, it was a shift in cinema where you saw more real emotions, and it kind of wasn't placating like a lot of 50s movies where it's just a lot of feel-good movies. I mean, obviously there were movies that dealt with more dark subject matter, but this movie was very dark, and you see women getting slapped, and I know Sean Connery approves of it, but it troubles me deeply when you see women getting slapped around, and this movie has some very dark subject themes. So I am 5 out of 5 on this film. IMDb is 8 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, 94%. Google users, only 68%. I wonder it's because a lot of the Google users are just not really watching the classics. Thank God Turner Classic Movies is being saved by Spielberg and some of those other guys and Scorsese, because a lot of these movies need to be exposed to a younger generation. It is beautifully filmed in black and white. It was filmed on location in New York City over a 6-week period. This is one thing that I do not like about studios. They thought the subject matter would be kind of dark, and so originally they weren't really doing a lot of advertising for it, but then it started getting a lot of public feedback in a positive manner, and then they really started promoting the film. So it made $7.6 million at the box office, but it only cost $2.1 million to make since it was a commercial success. George C. Scott, Paul Newman, Jackie Gleason, and Piper Laurie. All excellent performances. You see this fast Eddie Felson, the Paul Newman pool hustler guy. He's trying to break into the big leagues by playing one of the greats who was Minnesota Fats, played by Jackie Gleason. High stakes pool, lots of money, and then he doesn't have the money and he has to lean on George C. Scott, and he kind of chooses his woman over his lust for money and fame. And you also see him struggling with drinking and just poor decision making, and it is an intense movie. This is a very interesting note. So they had originally cast Newman, but he turned down the role as he was playing opposite Elizabeth Taylor in this movie called Two for the Seesaw. And then they ended up casting Bobby Darin, who is a great 50s pop singer, have several of his records. But then Elizabeth Taylor had shooting overruns on a Cleopatra, and she wasn't able to make it into the Two for the Seesaw. So they ended up calling back Newman and letting him know, or Newman ended up getting in touch with him and saying, hey, I'm available. Let me see the script to see if I'm interested. He read half of it, loved it, agreed to take the role. These terrible people, the producers of this movie, did not have the backbone to tell Bobby Darin that he was off the picture, and he found out secondhand, and the article didn't say anything more, but that's kind of crappy. Such is Hollywood, a dark and oppressive regime, but we can still enjoy classic gems like this. I don't want to say it's a redemption story. Maybe it kind of is. The back of the box says it's a cinematic triumph. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, was voted as one of the year's 10 best by the New York Times for 1961. Yeah. And it's also preserved by the National Library of Congress Film Library. So there you go. What else? It was filmed primarily at 2 pool halls, McGear's and Ames Billiard Academy, now defunct pool halls in Manhattan. And you just watched this movie, and I was talking to my neighbor Kyle about this yesterday. You feel like this is a movie of its time. You see all these guys just gathered around watching these people play each other in high-stakes pool. And I thought to myself, in a modern era, would you see a bunch of guys at a pool hall on a Tuesday afternoon watching people play pool? I don't know. I'm not in that world. They wanted the movie to be extra real, so the director hired real New York City street toughs to be background extras and have small roles in the film, and it was brilliantly cast. So the director also had written an earlier playwright of this film called Corner Pocket, but that didn't really go anywhere. And he had originally, when making this movie, he had been focusing more on the game itself, but then wanted to show more of the humanity of the players and the characters, which he did an excellent job. But they kind of interlaced because it said that pool experienced a huge cultural resurgence after this film. So check it out. Highly recommend it. If you like black and white films, if you like Paul Newman, it's just an excellent film, whether you like pool or not. It's a tragedy. It really is. And next, we will be reviewing The Color of Money. So tune in and see my follow-up review for part 2, which is coming soon. Until next time, folks.